Much shorter video today, but connected. Gary, Indiana. Probably have never heard of it until recently, if you've heard of it at all. People of Indiana, not just the city of Gary, were hit with a nasty storm about a week ago, and they've been without power ever since, over a week straight. After posting the video yesterday, I had been sent an article about how data centers had caused the power outages in Gary, Indiana. And that's, by the way, simply not true. It just isn't. But it made me curious because the best lies always have a kernel of truth in them. So at least at the surface of this, it seems to have nothing to do with data centers. But what if you dig a little bit deeper? The storms caused the outages. It wasn't data centers. But the storms have brought the nation's attention to Gary, Indiana, where the data center debate and animosity towards utility companies is getting pretty serious. So serious that literal gunshots have been fired at local utility workers. But why? Right? Why would you shoot at people who are there to fix your current power problem? Do the people of Gary, Indiana have some particular reason to dislike or mistrust the utility companies enough to actually shoot at them? Full disclaimer here, don't shoot at utility workers. Try your best not to shoot at anybody, but especially not those guys. They're not the ones who make the decisions to raise your rates. But is there anything that may point to animosity towards utility companies surrounding Gary, Indiana, or Indiana at large? If you do look a little deeper, boy, you're going to absolutely find some reasons. It turns out residents of Indiana have experienced quite a few problems with their utility companies, and most of these issues are actually connected to data centers. Gary, Indiana is feeling the pressure from the plan to build data centers like we talked about in the video. The first point of contention was an average of an $80 increase in monthly power bill. While this was being scrutinized and talked about, a technical error in power meters hit the news cycles. But here's the problem. The error wasn't reported for a full year after it was discovered by the utilities companies, not making people very happy about that. And it resulted in about 3,500 people paying double their utility bill. Soon after this, a deal was struck with Amazon to build data centers in northern Indiana. There was pushback, of course, but the utilities companies promised that they had made a great deal with Amazon to cover the costs to build these things. And that would actually return about $1 billion worth of credits back to the people of Indiana. But those who understood the deal noticed that this should actually be closer to $4 billion if everything the utilities companies were claiming was true. Experts were saying that the math didn't add up here, like it doesn't in a lot of places surrounding this issue, and that this $1 billion number was about 75% less than it should be to cover what the utilities companies were claiming it would cover. And concerns were arising that utilities companies and big tech were not being transparent, and we're just going to find another way to offload all those costs to the average citizens of Indiana. And this brought a particular piece of legislation to the spotlight. There's a bill that was passed in the Senate to allow, wait for it, non-industrial power users, you and me, average citizens, to be charged more for their power usage in order to support future power plant production construction. By the way, this bill doesn't actually care whether the plants are actually built or not, but this does allow utilities companies to charge more, not because you used more power, but because to basically support future building of power plants. And this is the trap that we spoke about yesterday. Once you accept enough data centers, you are by proxy accepting that you will absolutely and eventually need to build power plants. Power plants that wouldn't otherwise be needed if not for the additional draw from data centers. If all this wasn't enough to make you cautious about all this, Indiana utilities companies seem to be the first in America to create a completely separate division, a subsidiary company to build a separate grid just for data centers, raising the question, will that money that's going to be charged to ratepayers, average citizens like you and me, ever even go to improving the grid that the common people will use and not just to this new grid that's built just for data centers? Remember the crazy things that we talked about in that video yesterday about having to potentially double the power production of our country in 10, 15, or 20 years? Well, Indiana utilities companies have stated that they may have to quadruple the state's power production by 2030. And all of this comes right after a new report from the Department of Energy that blackouts in America may increase by up to 100 times by 2030. Excuse me? Go look it up. Energy.gov. Why is this not in the news every day? Am I the crazy one here? Because God bless the people of Indiana, because it looks like after the current situation is cleaned up and power is restored, that really is just the start of their problems. Indiana is now the focal point of the nation on exactly what we don't want to happen. Deals made behind closed doors, math that doesn't add up, and legislation that unambiguously places the burden to build power plants and infrastructure on the citizens, not giant tech companies, and not the corporations who need the data centers that are directly causing the need for more power production. I think we need to keep an eye on Gary, Indiana, and watch that data center video that's linked below.